Welcome to Prajavahini. I'm Archana Swami. I'm at the Bangalore Literature Festival on day one at Lalit Ashok.
Hey Bangalore, so delighted to be at the Bangalore Literary Festival that is sponsored by people, not by corporations.
Bangalore Literature Festival 2022. Celebrating literature by people from all walks of life across the country and the globe. This two-day event has showcased authors, poets, literature enthusiasts, and adding the glamour of sports personalities and stars from the film industry. Discussions about Cubbon Park to cricket ground, from childhood experiments to rethinking about aging. Every speaker gave an innovative perspective and left the audience enriched. This cultural celebration, which also had different activities for children, surely won their hearts. Book lovers walking with the signed copies from their favorite authors is definitely the highlight of the memories that they carried from this eventful weekend.
When I saw myself in the mirror, I became very emotional. I started to cry. And he told me, it's fine, you work hard.
100,000 people to parade through the host city dressed in blue, singing patriotic songs about India with doles in hand.
But every time I read this passage, the hair on the back of my neck stand up because I can almost visualize it. Having worked now actively for 10 years in this ecosystem, I can very confidently say that within my lifetime at least, I feel that we can qualify for a FIFA World Cup.
Dream Heroes scenario, I only have two options. Either I'm playing 2034 as a player or I'm giving a speech as a Prime Minister. So
Today we have Vikram Chandra, the author of Sacred Games. Let's know his experience with Bangalore Literature Festival and much more through his voice.
Thank you for having me on. I love the Bangalore Literature Festival. There's a lot of excitement here. There's many amazing writers who will sign your books for you, so you should come.
Sure. So, may I know a little more about your thought process before you wrote your Sacred Games?
Well, Sacred Games specifically was written in response to the rise of organized crime in Bombay in 80s through the 90s. And so, as a long-time citizen of Bombay, I just wanted to understand what was happening and why it was happening. So that's where it started.
So, what are your feelings about winning, being a South Asian?
What can you feel except great about it? So of course there's a lot of happiness about it, and I'm very glad it draws attention to the fact that there's lots being written here in South Asian languages, and hopefully the world and we will look at this literature a lot more.
What inspires you to write so-called difficult by everybody?
Life inspires me to write, human beings inspires me to write, the world inspires me to write, and these are all complex subjects.
And what are you looking forward in the Bangalore Literature Festival?
Just a lot of interaction with a lot more new people, literature being celebrated, and just the book being considered as something which is important, linking all of us together. I think that's a great thing.
And right now, are you in that mode of celebrating your book or already in the plans of writing the next one?
I don't think in that language, so I'm happy with the celebration, but of course a writer has to think about writing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have Devika Karyappa with me, who's a children's author. Let's know her journey and what inspired her to write children's books.
Specifically, I write children's books, of course, but I specifically write non-fiction books. And even more specifically, I write on history and archaeology for children.
Wow.
And the reason I do that is that I used to be a student of archaeology. And while I was doing my master's, archaeology can tend to be a little bit of a dry subject sometimes because there's a lot of hard work with bones and tools and things. And while I was doing those things, it used to always occur to me that these are really interesting stories, very interesting stories coming out of here, which are not necessarily translated into something that a child can understand or relate to. So a long time, more than 20 years before I actually started writing my book, I had this idea that I would like to write on archaeology for children. So my first book is called India Through Archaeology, Excavating History. Yeah. So that is my...
Brings you to Bangalore and the Bangalore Literature Festival.
Well, I'm very lucky because I'm from California. I live in Norway, and I was in Australia for a book tour for my book for 2 months. And I was very lucky because this festival and another festival invited me to come to Bangalore. And I've never been to India, so that was a very big deal. So I said yes immediately. And they said, come and talk about your book, talk about teaching creative writing, which I do. So I basically just got lucky that I was near India, and you guys invited me. So very, very lucky.
Honored to have you here, definitely. So how is India treating you, and how are you feeling being in Bangalore?
I have to admit, I had heard and I knew that India was a big place with lots of people and crazy traffic, but the experience has been very, very intense. So taking a tuk-tuk around Bangalore with all the traffic and the honking and the people, it's very intense for someone. I live in a town where there's no noise. It's very, very quiet. People are sort of very private. So the thing that's really impressed me here is that even though there's millions of people and everyone's busy, people are always friendly. They talk to you, they help you. So to me, the people are what matter in a place. So I'm sort of sold on the Indian people. And the food. Like, you guys have no bad food. It's weird. Like, everything is good. Everything I eat is good. It's crazy.
Do we expect any of your literary act going on with Indian food or Indian culture?
I've been thinking about that because I was in Australia for 2 months and I did get a story out of Australia. I have yet to find a story. I mean, there's obviously lots of stories here, but I think I would need more time in India because it's a very foreign culture to feel like I had the ability to write a story. Even about a foreigner coming to India, I might need some time to make it a real, to make it interesting,
ನಮ್ಮ ಈ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಲಿಟ್ರೇಚರ್ ಫೆಸ್ಟಿವಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಪುನಃ ಒಂದು ಪೂರ್ವ ವೈಭವ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತಮಗನಿಸ್ತದೆಯಾ?
ಆಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಖಂಡಿತ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ 2 ವರ್ಷ 3 ವರ್ಷ ನಮಗೆ ಒಂಥರ ಈ ಹಬ್ಬ ಉತ್ಸವ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಮರ್ತೇ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿತ್ತು. ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಒಂಥರ ಡಬ್ಬಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿಟ್ಟಂಗೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮುಖತಃ ನೋಡೋದಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಸ್ಪರ್ಶ, ಟಚ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ಎದುರುಗಡೆ ಕೂತು, ಅದು ನಿಜವಾಗೂ ಈ ಸತಿ ಅಂತೂ ತುಂಬ ಸಂಭ್ರಮ ಇದೆ. ನನಗಂತೂ ನಿಜವಾದ ಹಬ್ಬ ಅಂದರೆ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯೋತ್ಸವನೇ.
ಈ ವರ್ಷ ನೀವು ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲಾಗಿ ನೋಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಕಾಯ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಯಾವ ಸೆಷನ್ ಅಟೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ?
ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೆಷನ್ನು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ. ತುಂಬ ಜನ ನನಗೆ ಅದು ಈಗ ಪೀಕೋ ಏರ್ನ ನಾವು ನೋಡೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರು ಬಂದಿರೋದು, ಮತ್ತು ತುಂಬ ಜನ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ನಾನು ಭೇಟಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದವರು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ. ಮತ್ತು ಹೋದ್ಸತಿ ಹಳಬರ ಯಾರ್ಯಾರ್ದು ನೋಡಿದ್ನ, ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ರಾಮಚಂದ್ರ ಗುಹಾನ ನೀವು 2 ಸತಿ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸತಿ ಕೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಮತ್ತು ವಿವೇಕ್ ಶಾನ್ಭಾಗಿದ್ರು, ಯಂಗ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಯುವ ಬರಹಗಾರನ ಪ್ರತಿಭೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಸಿದ್ದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಎಸ್ತರ್ ಅನಂತಮೂರ್ತಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ವನಮಾಲ ಅವರು ಮಾತಾಡಿಸಿದ್ದು ಅದು ತುಂಬ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು ಆ ಸೆಷನ್ನು. ಮತ್ತು ತುಂಬ ವಸುಧೇಂದ್ರ ಅವ್ರದ್ದೊಂದು ಸೆಷನ್, ಅಫ್ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಅದು ತೇಜ ತುಂಗಭದ್ರದ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಆದದ್ದು, ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೆಷನ್ಗಳು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ.
ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಪೊಯೆಟ್ರಿ ಸಮೇತ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು.
ಇಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿ, ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಹೋಗಲಿ, ಇಡೀ ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ಸುತ್ತಿದ್ರೂ ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದ ಕವಿ ಅಂತಲೇ ರೆಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ರತಿನಿಧಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು.
Hey Bangalore, so delighted to be at the Bangalore Literary Festival, so delighted to be at a festival that is sponsored by people, not by corporations, and comes from like somewhere deep inside the heart, some great love of books that this city has. I went yesterday to Church Street and it was just so delightful that in the heart of the commercial city, 3 huge bookshops full of people buying, full of lovely books curated by people who obviously cared about books. It was wonderful. I'm delighted to be back. And Bangalore, you have to look after your book culture, which means no buying on Amazon, no buying on online stores, but getting out there to a bookshop, smelling a book, enjoying reading, choosing, selecting. That's what literary festivals are for, to bring you and me closer together. So come to the literary festival and hang out.
on day 2 of Bangalore Literature Festival. We have the author of Sound of Waves, Gauri Narayan, with us. Let's have a quick interaction with her.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about something that I'm quite overwhelmed by, surprised by, and thoroughly delighted by. It's a translation of this book called The Sound of Waves. The original is in Tamil called Alai Osai, and it was written by Kalki Krishnamurthy. And everybody knows Kalki, especially after the release of PS1, the Maniratnam film, the blockbuster. You know, they know him as the author of this novel called Ponniyin Selvan. They don't realize that he is an iconic Tamil writer who's written any number of other novels and lots of non-fiction. He was a freedom fighter and a political analyst also. So it just so happens that he is my grandfather. And during the years of the lockdown, I decided to translate this book because, you know, it's a huge book. And to do this, I needed the time without distractions. And I'm basically a journalist, also a theatre director and a playwright. I write my plays and direct them. So I've never had the time to really sit down and plunge into a work of such profundity and depth. And also a book that is so racy and enjoyable. This book is not so well known, though this won the Sahitya Academy Award posthumously. But well, it was a privilege to translate it, and I think I found myself when I read this. I understood my heritage, my immediate heritage, and the values that people in my grandfather's generation lived by, and the values that we must perpetuate today.
I have one of the youngest authors of Bangalore Literature Festival, Inaya Gala, with her book The Other Side.
So The Other Side is a teen horror adventure novel in which there are 4 kids, Maya, Rita, Harry and Addie, who go on a school trip to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And there they get involved with dangerous spirits, and ultimately they have to do a rescue mission all the way to the other side. So the process of writing the book was definitely a fun one. So I started when I was about 11, and the first draft, the first manuscript was done when I was almost 12. Then of course there was the process of finding a publisher. I got into contact with the Book Bakers, they're a literary agency, and there I met Suhail sir, who is my agent. He helped me to improve the book. We edited the book together, and then we got in touch with Om Books Publishing House, and then we got the book published. I definitely plan to continue writing even when I become an adult. If it really takes off, then I'd probably have it as a main profession. Otherwise, I'd still like to keep doing it as a side job.
It's wonderful to see young budding like authors or somebody who's interested to write more. So how are you focusing on improving the skill or just sharpening whatever your creative side is?
It's necessary to keep reading more to, become a better writer, because all my experience of writing has come from reading. I like to read a lot, and reading is something I've always loved. So I took inspiration from that, and that's how I wrote my first novel, and that's how I'd continue to write my next one. Firstly, you should keep reading. Always read, and then try to find some time during your day to write at least 1 or 2 pages a day. If you really like writing, you will find time for yourself and start writing.
I have Ranjini and Ruchira with us with their children's book, History Distry.
So History Distry is a book for older kids, like teenagers and so on. So it's an attempt by us to make history fun and bring it to life. So we have a combination here of a story about twins, Samar and Sia, who basically go through 15 historical events, and they have a lot of adventures, and they also end up cooking a dish which is inspired by one of the events. Yeah.
So for example,
What inspired you to write such an interesting book?
I think it's just curiosity, because we're both history buffs and we've been reading a lot of history books as adults. I don't think we enjoyed so much reading the history textbooks when we were in school. So historical fiction is what we used to read. And then of course we're into food, we're food writers. So we figured why not combine the two loves and come up with a book. So for example, this book answers questions like, what was the first meal on the moon? When Neil Armstrong went to the moon, what did he eat? What was the last meal on the Titanic, the ship before it sank? What did the soldiers eat during the First World War? And things like that. So I think the idea was to get outside the precincts of a history textbook and make history more accessible and fun for children.
How are the Bangalore audience and how are you?
Massive Bangalore audience. I had a signing queue that took an hour to work through, and really enthusiastic.
What is your impression on attending such festivals?
Well, I enjoy them. I played a small part in bringing literary festivals here. This is one of the very best. It's fantastic.
And what is the message you want to give Bangalore audience?
Go buy my books now and listen to the wonderful Empire Pod, which is. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
We are with Saikat Majumdar. Let's know more about his experiences with Bangalore Literature Festival and also his new book, The Middle Finger.
So I'm really struck by the enthusiasm here there is, even among the young tech crowd who work in tech and other corporate world, but they're exploring things like photography, writing, film, and they come together on so many of these wonderful, workshops. So I've come to develop a really kind of close relationship with the literary and the artistic community of Bangalore, and it comes all together in the Bangalore Literature Festival, which is very different from other festivals like Jaipur, because they don't have big sponsors. It's entirely citizen sponsored, and that I think is very commendable. Shiny and her team does a great job. And also what I've noticed is they don't have a lot of film stars or cricketers, which they really focus on literature, they really focus on serious writing, and yet look at the turnout is amazing. So I think something very exciting is happening in Bangalore and the Literature Festival here.
At the Bangalore Literature Festival, we are with Hindol Sen Gupta. Please let us know more about your book, Sing, Dance and Pray.
So I was very intrigued by this, by the character of Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON. After Swami Vivekananda, Srila Prabhupada is the biggest figure in global Hinduism. You see, and he managed to, he only went to America at the age of 70, okay? And he only lived between 70 and 80, only for 10-11 years. At that time, when most people are in retirement and so on and so forth, he managed to build a global movement, more than 100 temples in 10 years, right? So it's an incredible feat. So I was fascinated by this character. And that's why I wrote Sing, Dance and Pray on the life of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada always said that, you should rejoice in the love for Krishna, right? That bhakti always makes you happy. If you're not happy with God, who will you be happy with, right? So therefore, his method of teaching and preaching was with singing and dancing and praying, right? So that is the great thing about Srila Prabhupada's method of teaching, about, his way, so to speak. Also, he was a big foodie. He was a great cook himself. He used to make, I have put some recipes of his food also in the book. So, he's a very fascinating character.
I have the co-founders of the social impact organization Silver Talkies, who has taken their next step forward by writing a new book which is called Rethink Aging. Let's get to know more about their book through their words. We have seen your journey through Silver Talkies. What inspired you to take this new initiative, rather I would say a new step forward of writing a book?
Actually, the book was something which happened by chance, because one of the Penguin editors saw our work online and she really resonated with the idea of Silver Talkies, and she reached out to us. Shiny Das, she reached out to us and she said, would you like to kind of cover your journey and your learnings through a book? And we said, why not? And so we wrote the book proposal, we submitted it to Penguin, which got accepted, and that's how the book happened.
And do you have to add something of your experiences in the process of writing?
Well, I think for both of us in the process of writing, our experience would have been learning, which has happened earlier also with Silver Talkies. But for the book, we kind of went in depth with people's lives. How did they arrive at what they're doing now? How are they working out their older years in a very interesting fashion? I'm not saying everybody is superbly happy, but they are not. These are not people who are bored or wanting to, in a life that is empty. So hearing their experience, how they arrived there was I think that journey was very personally fulfilling for both of us, I think.
I have Rita Chablani with us to speak about her book, We Will Be Together Always.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. So basically this book is about love, not romance. Love, because romance burns itself out. It's like a fire, and then only the embers remain. But love remains. And I'm talking in this book about how if you were to unbox, unlabel relationships.
So what inspired you to write such a beautiful concept?
Well, this was a lockdown baby, this book. and everything around us was depression. There were people who were desolate, they were losing jobs. And out of that, I think every human being goes through that process in life, and ultimately hope wins, optimism wins, joy wins, happiness wins. Every human being wants to be happy at the end of the day. Nobody wants unhappiness, because that's what you want through relationships, through situations, through people, whatever way you get it. But you want that joy, that hope, that love.
Wonderful. I'm just inspired to just listen to you a lot more. What has been your journey as you're writing these stories and inspiring people to just see the element of love?
Well, for me, I think I was working for UNICEF, and later I decided that I would get into the process. I think education is very dear to me, and I champion the cause of education for less privileged girls or boys who are not given a chance. So I have got involved into 2 NGOs since many years, and I teach English, spoken English, because that's the universal language. And through my writings, through my books, my children read these books and they find that joy, that hope, and something to become in their lives. Because when you have hope, you can move forward and you can do what you want to do and reach your goal.
The Bangalore Literature Festival, is it your first visit?
This is the first time, yes. This is the first
and
time.
how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it's pretty good, but I was surprised actually. I didn't know there would be many authors and many of these celebrities who I could really meet, see with my own eyes. And yeah, it was a fun experience after all.
Are you an avid reader?
Yeah, I do read a lot of
What's
books.
your genre of reading? What do you like?
I'm more into science fiction.
Lovely.
Yeah.
What are your favorite books?
Right now the favorite book is it's a psychological thriller. It's called The Silent Patient.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thank you. Thanks.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರ ಈ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯೋತ್ಸವ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬರು ನೋಡಬೇಕಾದಂಥದ್ದು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಬುಕ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಂಡುಕೊಂಡು ಓದಬೇಕಂತ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜ್ಞಾನವನ್ನು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂತ ಈ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯೋತ್ಸವದಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗಿದೆ.
Last deadline was near 8 kilometers from there, in Karnataka, Pulikere is the name, where I thought, this is my imaginary